Welcome to Bible Story Time. Step into the world of faith, courage, and divine wisdom as we bring the greatest Bible stories to life. Long ago, but not so long that memory cannot reach it, there lived a man named Job Anderson in the quiet countryside of Texas, where golden fields stretched wide, and the sunrise painted the barns with the color of fire. Job was known far and wide as the most respected man in Harmony County. His ranch was the pride of the valley. Hundreds of cattle, sheep grazing on green pastures, and farmhands who sang hymns as they worked. His home, built of stone and timber, stood on a hill where the wind carried the scent of hay and wildflowers. But it was not Job's wealth that made him great. It was his heart. He was kind to the poor, generous to the needy, and humble before God. Every morning before the sun rose, he would kneel beside his bed, bow his head, and pray, "Lord, you have given me everything I have. Let me never forget that all blessings come from you." And when his children gathered around the dinner table, 7 sons and 3 daughters, Job would smile proudly and thank God for the sound of their laughter. After every feast, he would offer prayers for them, saying, "Perhaps my children have sinned or spoken foolishly in their hearts. I will pray that the Lord forgives them." Job's life was peaceful. His days were full of work and joy. His nights were filled with the sound of music and the warmth of family. And all who knew him said, "Surely God's hand rests upon Job." But far beyond the blue skies, beyond the stars and the wind, in the courts of heaven itself, another story was being written. One day, as the angels gathered before God's throne to give an account of their work on earth, Satan, the accuser, also came among them. He had been walking the earth, whispering doubt into hearts, sowing pride among kings, and stirring trouble where peace once dwelt. God looked upon him and asked, "Where have you come from, Lucifer?" Satan bowed slightly, his smile sharp and cold. "From walking to and fro upon the earth," he said, "and watching your creation." Then God spoke with a voice that filled the heavens with light. "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on earth, blameless and upright, a man who fears God and turns away from evil." Satan's smile widened. "Does Job fear God for nothing? Haven't you blessed him, surrounded him with wealth and protection? Of course he loves you. Look at all you've given him. But take away his blessings, and he will curse you to your face." The angels grew silent. The air in heaven grew still. Then God said, "Very well, all that is in your hands, but do not lay a hand on Job himself." And just like that, the test began. That evening, in the rolling fields of Texas, Job stood watching his cattle graze as the sun melted into the horizon. The air was peaceful, soft, and golden, but before the stars could appear, the wind began to change. One of Job's servants came running from the fields, dust rising behind him. "Master, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding nearby when raiders attacked. They've taken the animals and killed the workers. I am the only one who escaped." Before Job could reply, another servant ran up, breathless and pale. Fire fell from the sky. It burned the sheep and every shepherd in the fields. And even as those words left his mouth, a third servant stumbled forward, his clothes torn. "The Chaldeans raided the camels, sir. They took them all and killed the rest of us. I alone have survived." Job stood still, his heart pounding. But then came the 4th messenger, the one whose words would break him completely. He fell to his knees, trembling. "Sir, your sons and daughters were feasting in the oldest brother's house when a storm swept across the desert. The house collapsed. They're all gone, all of them." The world seemed to stop. The sky turned gray. Job fell to the ground. His body shook. His hands clutched the dust. He tore his robe in grief, shaved his head, and knelt in silence. The servants stood around him, weeping softly. No one dared speak. Finally, Job lifted his tear-streaked face to heaven and whispered, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." The wind carried his words across the hills. Somewhere far above, the angels wept, and even Satan could not speak. Days passed. The ranch grew quiet. The laughter that once filled the halls was gone. But Job did not curse God. He mourned, he prayed, and he waited. At night, He sat by the fire, staring into the flames, his heart broken, but his faith still burning faintly, like an ember refusing to die. Neighbors came and shook their heads. "Job, you must have angered God," they said. "No one loses everything in one day unless heaven is displeased." But Job only replied, "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" He still knelt to pray each morning, though his lips trembled and his voice cracked. And in heaven, God looked upon him with pride. For though Satan had taken everything from him, Job's faith remained. The angels sang softly once more. But Satan was not finished. He returned before God and said, "Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his life. Strike him with pain and suffering, and he will surely curse you." And God said, "Very well, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." And so the next trial was prepared. But before the storm of sickness and sorrow came upon him, Job lifted his eyes to heaven once more and whispered, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." The heavens were silent. The earth was still. The test of the faithful had only just begun. The sun had not yet risen when Job awoke with a sharp pain in his body. His head throbbed, his skin burned, and a strange weakness crawled through his bones. He sat up slowly, sweat covering his face. By the time morning came, his body was covered with sores, from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet. Job, once strong as an oak, now trembled like an old branch in the wind. He went outside, sat among the ashes behind his house, and scraped his sores with a broken piece of pottery. The ranch was silent. His workers were gone. His barn stood empty, and the sound of laughter had long vanished from his home. Only the rustling of dry grass and the whispering wind remained. His wife, Sarah, came to him, her eyes red from weeping. She had lost everything, too, her children, her comfort, her joy. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Job, look at you. Look at what's become of us. You're sitting here in ashes, your body broken, your heart shattered. After all your prayers and good deeds, this is what God gives you." Job turned his head slowly. His eyes, though filled with pain, still carried peace. "Sarah," he said gently, "shall we accept only good from God and not trouble? The Lord's ways are higher than ours. We cannot see what he sees." She covered her face and wept. She could not understand how he could still speak of faith. But Job's faith was not built on comfort. It was built on trust. Even when everything was stripped away, his heart clung to the belief that God was still God. The visit of the three friends. Days turned into weeks. Word spread across the countryside about the man who lost everything yet refused to curse God. One afternoon, 3 of Job's old friends arrived at his ranch: Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They came from faraway towns, bringing food, blankets, and sorrowful hearts. But when they saw Job sitting in the ashes, thin, scarred, and weak, they did not recognize him. They tore their clothes in grief, threw dust upon their heads, and sat beside him on the ground. For 7 days and 7 nights, they said nothing, not one word. The silence between them was heavy, filled with pain too deep for speech. And then, on the 8th day, Job spoke. His voice was trembling. "I wish I had never been born," he cried. "I wish the day I first saw the light had been darkness. Why must I live if my life brings only sorrow?" His friends listened quietly at first, but soon their silence turned into judgment. Eliphaz spoke first, his tone gentle but firm. "Job, my friend, you have always taught others about faith. But surely God would not punish a righteous man without reason. There must be sin somewhere." Job looked at him, weary but calm. "I have done no wrong," he said softly. "My conscience is clear before God." Then Bildad spoke, his voice sharper. "Does God pervert justice? If your children sinned, perhaps they brought this upon themselves. If you repent, God will bless you again." Job's eyes filled with tears. "You do not understand my pain," he whispered. "I would speak with God himself if I could." Then Zophar, the youngest, spoke harshly. "Stop pretending, Job. You may think you are pure, but no one is blameless before God. Repent, and maybe he will forgive you." The words cut deep. Job's heart ached, not only from his pain, but from his friend's misunderstanding. He looked up to the heavens and cried out, "Oh, that I knew where to find him. I would go to his throne and plead my case. I have not turned from his commands, yet he has crushed me without cause. The wind blew through the ashes. The friend sat in silence, unsure what to say next. Night came. The moon shone faintly on the barren land. Job sat alone, staring into the sky, his heart wrestling with questions that had no answers. "Why, Lord?" he whispered. "Why would you allow this suffering? I served you faithfully. I gave to the poor. I honored your name. So why now this silence?" The heavens gave no reply. Days passed. Job's friends kept arguing, each insisting they knew why he suffered. But Job held to one truth. Even if he slays me, yet will I trust in him. Still, deep down, his heart longed for a word from heaven. And then, one night, the sky began to stir. The wind rose. The clouds twisted. Thunder rolled across the horizon like a mighty drum. Lightning flashed, and from the storm came a voice, powerful, deep, and full of glory. It was the voice of God. "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge?" The voice said. "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you understand. Who shut the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? Have you commanded the morning or shown the dawn its place?" Job fell to his knees, trembling. God's voice rolled like thunder, yet it was not cruel. It was a sound of truth, a reminder that some mysteries are far beyond human understanding. "Can you bind the chains of the stars?" the Lord continued. "Can you raise your voice to the clouds and command the rain to fall? Do you give the horse its strength or clothe the skies with lightning?" Tears streamed down Job's face. He finally understood. "Forgive me, Lord," he whispered. "I spoke of things too wonderful for me to know. I will be silent now." And in that moment of surrender, peace returned to Job's heart. God restores Job. When Job repented, God turned his anger toward the 3 friends who had spoken wrongly about him. He told them to offer sacrifices and have Job pray for them. Job prayed, earnestly, humbly, lovingly, for the very men who had accused him. And then the tide began to turn. Rain fell upon the dry land. Crops began to grow again. Cattle filled the pastures. Job's barns overflowed once more, his ranch alive with laughter and song. God blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the first. He gave him double what he had before, twice the cattle, twice the wealth, and 10 new children who grew strong and wise. Job lived long enough to see his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and each morning, as the sun rose over his fields, he lifted his hands and whispered, "My Redeemer lives." Moral lesson: the story of Job teaches us that faith is not proven in good times, but in trials. God sometimes allows suffering, not to destroy us, but to strengthen us. Even when we do not understand, we can still trust his plan. Job lost everything, but his faith never broke. And in the end, his reward was greater than before. When life feels unfair, remember, God may be silent, but he is never absent. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Job 13, verse 15. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former. Job 42, verse 12. Just like Job, we all face hard times, days when everything feels lost and hope seems far away. But even in our lowest moments, God's love remains constant. If this story reminded you that faith shines brightest in the storm, then let your light shine too. Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear that no pain lasts forever, and God always restores those who trust him. Now tell us in the comments, what did you learn from Job's faith? How has God helped you through tough times? Your story might encourage someone who needs hope today.